So, hello everyone who's already here. Uh, Today we have our third webinar in the series with guest speakers. Today we have Tom. We have Tom as our guest speaker from Belgium. He will talk about real life ransomware attack and go over details. We have Peter with us. Peter, I think the people from Latvia already know. He's an ethical hacker and quite good cybersecurity specialist. And we have Dana as well. I think,
Hello.
yeah. Um, I think people who watch these webinars, these series know her as well. Um, and so the topic will be about real life ransomware attack. But as I see, the people are still joining in. We will give couple of minutes to let the attendees in and to give them time to join. You know, while the calendar reminder pops up and people join in, it usually takes a couple of minutes for those who forgot to know. Yeah, we had this event planned. Okay. So I don't know, Tom. Maybe you want to introduce with yourself a little bit more, what you do. Yeah.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, I can do that. I'll maybe already share the screen. I have slides to introduce myself, so I can already start sharing.
uh,
Okay.
yeah, and we
So
can see your screen as well. Yeah.
perfect. That's a good test.
It's moving.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's moving. It's a
It's
small
yeah.
video.
It
It's
says.
yeah. So I'm with CyberValue. We are a pure play consulting company. So we only provide consulting and advisory around cybersecurity, no products or anything. We believe that when you try to defend everything, you really defend nothing, and you really need to know what matters most for your organization before you can protect it. If you don't know what matters for your organization, you're trying to protect everything in the same manner, and you will fail. And to protect something, prevention is ideal, but detection and response are a must. So you cannot only rely on preventive technology, you also need to invest in detection and response. And technology can help, but that alone is not enough. So, and who am I? So I'm Tom, more than 20 years now in information security, one of the co-founders at CyberValue. One of my previous roles, I started out as a security engineer and a consultant at a local Belgian company. Then I moved into Verizon, their global security consulting practice. I led the global practice actually for 5 or 6 years, specializing in analytics, SOC, and ICS protection. And I moved into strategic roles at HP and IBM, was the CISO for Worldline, and also did a scale up in London around managed detection and response services. So that's me. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you want to reach out afterwards. I don't know, Eagles, can we start or?
I'll couple of more notes about asking questions and procedural stuff,
Yeah,
and then you can start. So
yeah.
if you have any questions, you can write them in the chat or the Q&A section. I will read them out loud. We will have some discussion as well. But if we're not touching the topics you want, or so you have some notes, please let us know. And ask questions, or even maybe some comments at some points. Usually comments are sometimes better. They can evolve into some nice discussions about topics, because there are always more than one way. As I like to say, tree usually has more than just two ends. It has very many variations of that. So
Yeah.
yeah. Ask questions in the questions answers Q&A section, and we will have this recording on our social sites and event. You can on our platforms, on our accounts, as well as the previous ones. Just you look them up, look this one and the previous as well. So this is about the procedural, and I think Tom, you can go ahead and with the material you have prepared for us.
Okay, thank you for having me. So I'm going to talk to you today about a real-life ransomware case. So I'm not going to disclose the details of the company that was under attack, but I'm going to sketch a little bit about what the company was about. So we're talking about a company based in Belgium, focused on designing solutions for high-tech electronics. So really high-tech designs for the big names in the industry. Think about Intel, AMD, TSMC. They're their customers, but they themselves are a small outfit of 30, 40 people, and all engineers, very technical crowd. So at one, and it's important to know also the timing a bit. It happened, the case happened around December in the year of when we had the pandemic, so around 2020, that was December 2020. A couple of weeks before Christmas, we got a phone call from the CEO of the company on a Sunday, and he said, this is what is now on all my Linux machines. So they were very Linux heavy. So they had, all engineers were using Linux as their main operating system, and every machine only had one file on it anymore that was accessible, and that showed this. So basically, dear user, we inform you that your files have been cryptographically locked and currently unavailable to you, but don't worry, all data can be restored. If you don't want to lose your data, please contact us at one of those 3 email addresses, which I blacked out, but those are email addresses hosted at Tutanota and ProtonMail, so basically privacy focused email providers. And they also advised the company to also create an account on one of those systems to make sure that the email conversation between them and the attackers would be possible. And then comes my first question, I think, for the 3 of you. What would you do if you see this on your screen in your organization?
Yes. What we should not do is not panic. First rule, don't panic.
First, I would estimate the impact. Like, is it real? That's the first question.
Yeah, correct. Is it real? Is it not a fake virus, for example? That's a good point, actually, because there's a lot of fake viruses also out there.
Fake emails. There was also a case with one group. I think they tried to pretend they hacked someone, send a letter, but they did not hack anyone.
Yeah, correct.
Did you hear? Yeah, so they also do that.
Yeah. So
why,
the practice is not to make assumptions.
Exactly.
Test it out. Have verification. Have proof that this has really happened in a sense.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. So one of the first things we did, I'm going to talk what we did on day 1. It was real because they didn't have any other data on their systems anymore. It was only that file. So what we did on day 1, when we arrived there on Monday, what they already did was all impacted and non-impacted systems were shut down in the company. They completely disconnected the internet connection, which includes also disabling all user accounts. So what we already advised, because they had a cloud-based email system, we said, for safe side, disable, besides one admin that you can trust, disable all the user accounts and disable all the internet connections, so that there's no more potential exfiltration of data. The initial assessment that we had of the impact was that all systems were encrypted or erased, and the backups were either encrypted or erased. So what I mean by that is, in some cases, ransomware attackers, and in this case they also did it, they lack time to fully encrypt terabytes of data because it takes time. So they go for erasing it, which is not always foolproof, of course. They also erased all logs on the systems that they touched. And we saw the last successful non-impacted offline backup happened 6 months ago, because it's a small company. So their process was somebody needs to manually take the tape out and replace it, and that tape wasn't replaced for 6 months. The team was, although they're very technical, they design high-tech solutions, so they know how a computer works, but they really didn't know what to do next. They were in shock. They were it's almost a bit like psychological advice that you need to provide at that point, because they really are struck by lightning. They don't know what to do next. They also had no access anymore to their phone system, because their phone system was also one of the systems that was impacted, and it was fully voice over IP. So they were not able to communicate, not even through phone, also not through email, because their email system, they also thought it was compromised, but it was more the DNS server that they were hosting that was actually making sure that because you need DNS for email to function, that was also impacted, and they couldn't access email anymore. They also didn't have their contact details anymore, so they didn't know any more phone numbers of customers, of clients, of employees. That's all. That was all gone. So the management and the IT, the people managing the IT, they were in shock, and they couldn't think clearly anymore on day one. That's when we arrived. Couple of questions. First one: would you contact the attackers, and when? And if so, what are you going to tell them?
I would contact them just to buy time.
Yeah, that's an option.
But I didn't see any time limit in the initial letter. There was no time limit, right?
There's no time limit at this moment. So at this moment, this is all information you have. 3 email addresses where you can get in touch with, but nothing like you don't have an idea on what it would cost or what it would mean.
So if there's no deadline, I'm thinking, is there a point of dragging time? Because they're not in a hurry, obviously, the bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
Because normally they always provide deadline. For some reason, these guys did not. I wonder why.
We're not done yet, so it might still get into a deadline situation. So
also, I assume because it's middle of pandemic, right? Everyone's working from home, right? They were not in the office, so completely separated from everyone else.
Yeah, in the times of remote, when this was the inner peak of yeah, the timing is yeah, as well. But what would we do? Would we contact them? Well, yeah, to always having conversation takes time, and that would take time. But yeah, as Dana mentioned, no restrictions. Peter, maybe you have some notes on how would you react on this?
So based on what you told, like no VoIP, no email contacts, maybe you need to establish the separate infrastructure first to enable voice messages. That's first. And then I would split the command, split the staff to two parts. Like one, queue to communicate, like to figure out the requirements. The second, try to repair everything. But still, my choice in this case, if I see that everything is erased, I need to figure out what are the requirements, because this attack could be also automated, and maybe the intruder still not informed that it happened successfully.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, as well.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
Yeah, but restoring a redundancy communication channel, that is a good thing to have to do as well, of course, because without communication, nothing can happen.
I would ask the guys to, actually, I would contact the bad guys and ask them to prove that they can actually restore stuff. Just to drag time and annoy them, maybe, whatever. Maybe not the best idea, but definitely, I would not trust whatever they say and just ask them, okay.
Nowadays, when you cannot trust the information.
Of course, especially the bad guys. I mean, come on, they scam each other, not just the victims.
Yeah. I'll come back to what we did in the next slide, but the next question, maybe what would you do with the systems that were not impacted? At that point, we saw that only the Linux machines were encrypted. The Windows laptops that they had were not touched. Would you still trust these, or would you still work with those, or what would you do?
I wouldn't trust. No, I would like. I mean, before you can trust anything, you need to know how they got control of the Linux.
Yep.
And what's the architecture of the enterprise? Are they how are they connected? Are Linux machines? Are there other machines? Not just everything is Linux.
They have a mixed, so the main production environment is Linux, which is also what they use to design the technology. But they also had Windows laptops for some salespeople or working, people who prefer Windows to work on as their daily driver, and those were not impacted. There was no ransomware on those machines.
Yeah, but we don't know. There's not
There was
impacted
no
does not
visual,
mean not compromised. Yeah, so we would need to
nothing is
understand.
happening. Yeah, that you cannot see anything doesn't mean that nothing is happening.
Exactly.
But we have a question, and I was going that direction as well. Shouldn't you isolate the devices in the network in this case? If you have, I think in this case, those are both one affected devices and the devices that are not affected. If there's a segmentation of network, for example, it's easier to do. You mentioned production sites. Was impacted. That would be, I think, the question of the nuances of the environment itself. What can you do in this in the environment in that side?
Yep.
I think
correct.
Tom said that they unplugged everything.
So
that everything was unplugged.
Yep, they unblocked everything from the internet. But you're right, I think, Egils, and I'll come back to that in the next slide. There's also the case of isolate what you still can potentially save. And I think that's also what the question said. I think that's a good practice. But it also means how sure are you that they're really not impacted? So, and I'll come back to that in the next slide as well. In the meantime, on day one, you don't have phone calls. I think, as Peter said, it's crucial to set up some kind of redundant communication system. But what do you communicate? Because customers haven't been able to reach you for a day. They're picking up the phone. They're emailing you. Are you going to tell them, yeah, we have an attack, or are you going to basically tell them where you have technical problems, come back in a day or two? What do you guys think you should? What would you do?
We have technical issues because we are under attack. It's like under attack.
I mean, general practice I see around is that whenever there's not a suspicion, but like even in your face, you're being hacked. Companies do not publicly come and say out loud that necessarily on the first day. So they kind of like, oh, okay, we have some troubles, our servers are down, blah, blah, blah. So I guess we would take that route just to minimize the PR disaster. Or
well, there's two sides of this because in most cases companies don't take immediate responsibility and don't communicate this openly in most cases, but that usually gives a bigger impact. And if I was the decision maker, but in most cases IT staff is not the decision makers. They just recommend, and then there's another person who makes a decision. But my recommendation would be, it would depend on how much impact on the client it could do. If it's connected with the client accounts, then I think it's important to communicate. If the clients of this company client data is not involved, for example, if it's technical drawings or schematics of devices, then it's a little bit of different. It's inside information of the company and not connected to the users, to their addresses, to their information. And that, I think, there are different levels of importance and criticality of information for both, for the clients of the company and for the company itself. So I would suggest to communicate openly, just because I know that this would remedy the impact more faster. But that's my personal opinion in this, and there could be different scenarios depending on the details.
Yeah, correct. It depends a bit on the details. What we generally advise to customers is that to be as open as you can, but of course, don't overshare as well. You don't need to give all the details, but these days, unfortunately, a lot of other companies know that it's not a matter of if but when you will get a cyber attack, so they have some kind of respect that this will that this can happen to somebody, and so they're no longer blaming you for negligence, at least if you've done a couple of things right. So the other thing is, if you keep the communication very opaque, then your customers and suppliers are starting, their imagination is starting to work. So they're starting to think, what's going on and what are they hiding from us? What potential? I don't remember if some of you had the Garmin watch in 2019 when they were breached. We have technical difficulties on their website for about a week or two, and your watch couldn't sync, and it was very opaque what it was, and a lot of people were asking questions like, is my health data stolen? What's going on? And I think that fog of war that you have then is something you want to avoid as a company. Last question before I move to what we actually did. Would you do a full investigation of the machines, full forensic imaging of everything that you can find?
Well, we do need to figure out how they got compromised. We need to get the logs and everything, and maybe memory dumps, whatever you can get.
Yeah.
But not just the Linux, but also you need to, at the same time, you need to look into those Windows machines, because that could be a ticking time bomb.
Yeah. Exactly.
That could be like a stage 2. Okay, you don't listen to us. No, we got encrypted those windows as well. That could be the plan.
Yep. Exactly.
I would say you need to also check routers and printers. But you know what? If you shut down the facility, I would just simply isolate not to interrogate with attack tools. Like when you reboot some device, the attack tools may be removed from the memory or something. So you don't need to turn it off, but to have some limited set of controls over the infected systems. And yes, what you just said, when you communicate with your customers, possibly this could be one more attack vector if you participate in supply chain. So you could deliver the malware to them, or also they could be the attack vector. So maybe you need to communicate in a limited way, but also don't need to shut down everything and perform forensics on open connections. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, I would say well, you need to start digging anyway. To see how far you can get to dig, and you need to start digging. And if there's overwhelming amount of things to dig, either you expand your team or you prioritize things, and because it's all down to resources. What can you do? I would say it like that.
It's indeed resources as well, because in this case, the Linux machines, they were really heavy workstations, so with large graphic cards to do computations and stuff like that on AI models, which means that they're not easy to replace. So when they need to start doing some work again, it's not easy to procure, especially not in 2020 when there was a chip shortage. And I'll come back in the next slide. So what the team also did there was they decided not to do full forensics on everything, but to do a limited set, to do an investigation to find out what could potentially go on, but also already start rebuilding some machines because they needed to get back to work. So what did we do? The first a couple of days, we started the investigation to seeing what the actual impact was and what the root cause was of this attack. So what could potentially be how they came in, and what was their vector. We tried to safeguard what's not impacted. So indeed, we isolated those machines in the network that were not impacted, and we started to investigate if they were actually clean or not. To err on the safe side, we re-imaged all Windows machine as well at some point later, because we didn't want to we don't believe that they were touched, but just to be safe, we wanted to make sure that they were clean. We did get in contact with the attackers. Why? because at this point we didn't know yet what the cost of the ransom potentially could be. So if maybe it was only a couple of euros and we could get away with it for a good price, but we didn't know at this stage. And also, as I think Dana mentioned, to buy some time to make sure that we kept the conversation going and see what happened. The next thing we did, and that's also an important step, I think, if you're ever hit by ransomware, what you need to do is create a timeline of what data you lost. So we knew that we lost 6 months of data. So we went with the management team, like, okay, 6 months ago, what happened during the last 6 months? What of the projects were you doing? What of the data do you think you potentially actually have lost that is of value? And so we came back with a timeline. We started working on a timeline with the team, also because when you develop a new technology, for example, for an engineer, the first time it's hard because you need to invent it from your brain. But the second time, you already knew what you did in the past, so it's potentially easier to reconstruct some of those schematics and things that you did in the past. So we also started with recovery options and planning. So we investigated the erased backups. And as you know, if you erase something fast, you don't erase all the data in Linux. You basically only erase the bits pointing at the file. So you still have the raw data on the disk. So we started to do recovery on the backup servers, which made it seem that it could be possible that we could still recover a big chunk of the data. We also started to do employee communications because, you have 40 people that don't know on Monday what they needed to do, what they need to do for their job, what they need to communicate to their stakeholders, with their clients and stuff like that. And we also started to plan external communications with the with some of the key customers that they are working with on that moment. Just to be safe, because we didn't know at that point what the data, that they also stole the data. This was back in the day when double extortion schemes were still rare. So we just assumed data was potentially was stolen. So we reported the incident to the authorities and to the IC, to the Data Protection Authority in Belgium. Why? Because you only have 72 hours to report the stolen when personal data is stolen, and we weren't sure if otherwise we would meet the deadline. And you can actually already do a declaration of I have the hypothesis that data is stolen to the authorities. We also went to the authorities, so the police. The police, that's always a bit tricky in the sense that for larger hacks, they have their teams and they have forensic people on standby. But for like a small company, the support you get is it's the same as you report a stolen car. Basically, it's not that much assistance that you'll get at the
right.
So not fair.
Log it in our system, basically.
But they create like a log in their system, like thank you for providing. And I'll come back to later in the slides why it's important to actually still do that. But don't expect much. That they're overwhelmed with these types of attacks. So they don't do much. We also added legal assistance. Why? There are law firms that are specializing in these types of things, and it's also important to involve them because you need to investigate what you tell your customers and also what potential legal liabilities you have towards your customers. Meaning, you might have non-disclosure agreements with some of your customers where you are not allowed to share data, and in this case, your data might have been shared with somebody external where you don't know yet. So you might open yourself up to lawsuits. So it's important to get some legal assistance into seeing what you should and shouldn't do. What we also did in the first week, when we were reimaging some of those machines, we immediately got in touch with a 24/7 SOC provider and an EDR solution because they didn't have an EDR on those machines, the Linux machines, because they thought, why would I have an EDR on Linux? It's Linux, it's safe.
Did they have anything? Not just EDR.
They had a standard antivirus from let's say legacy brand that they had. So we moved into the next more advanced brand, and with a 24/7 service to also look for potential reattempts from the attacker. That were the first actions that we took.
I have one more question. So you said when everything got cut off, they cut off internet and no one knew how to contact anyone because all the phones were in the cloud or something. All the registry. So how did you like contact employees?
Because employees they were starting to use a WhatsApp group to add their employees, and so
was that before the incident?
No, it's created during the incident. So what happened was, because in a small company, of course, everybody knows, not everybody, but at least you know somebody who knows the other guy's number or the other girl's number, and you create some kind of you can, through a sort of phone tree approach, you create a communications plan with the entire company, and then you have a WhatsApp group where you can communicate with your teams. Usually, what happens is you go to the first line of managers, they contact who reports to them. They usually have their phones in their mobiles, and mobiles were not company attached. And so they were able to communicate with their employees. And yeah, we as Peter said, we made some efforts into making sure that the phone system was also back up and running as fast as possible, because we needed to be able to telephone and to call with external people as well. And then, of course, when you contact the attackers, they respond. So they responded with hello, and then they said the name of the CEO of the company. If you want to get the decryption key with the instruction on how to apply to decrypt the locked files, your company should make a payment of the amount of, and the amount was roughly 10% of the company's annual revenue, which was a sizable number. Euros in equivalent sum in Monero, so a Bitcoin cryptocurrency, on the day of payment to this Monero wallet. And as soon as we get the payment, you will get a decryption key. You get 3 business count, and now comes the delay. So you have 3 business days to comply. Otherwise, your sum increases by 10% with each day missing. And as a bonus, and that's what you often get, you get a full report in how we got into your network and how you can secure it for the future.
Involuntarily pen test.
Yeah, exactly. You get a pen test report basically.
But in this case, it looks like the victim gives the identification that the attack was successful. We give you 3 days from now. In this sense.
Yeah. So this was the response from the attacker. So the attacker indeed knew by this time the attack was successful, and they are starting the timer in this case.
But it's interesting that it didn't before. That's very curious.
I think they do it because they did it in the weekend. So they started the attack in the encryption in the weekend, and I guess they waited for everybody to come back in the office first, or on Monday to start up and realize what to do. I think that's just one, because I think if you put the timer straight on, then maybe it's too much stress, and I don't know. I'm not a specialist in attacker psychology, but so by this time, we knew we had lost 6 months worth of data, but we had a chance, as I told, to partially recover data, because the backup server, as I said, wasn't completely wiped, and there was still readable data on the hard drive. So we had a chance but it would take time. It's not an easy process to recover data from wiped drives. It would take some time to actually recover, but we had a fair chance, we believed at that point, that we recover. So what would you guys do if you see this message and in the state of impact that you are at this stage?
What I do?
Would you pay them?
So just a business.
No.
Just a business. You need to estimate if the recovery price comparable to ransom.
Yeah, but it's cheaper.
Also, yeah, is it cheaper, and the probability of success, of course. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, you need to weigh. It's also a willingness to pay, of course. Some say we don't want to pay because we don't want to finance crime. That's also.
Oh, it's just what they say, but what they do is they go with the option with the least cost. So if it's cheaper to pay ransom than lose 3, like,
well,
or whatever
most of the
business
businesses are
days.
money tendency. That what costs more cost effective in this. Most of
Yeah,
the
no,
businesses
no,
go this route.
but because for some companies it's cheaper to pay ransom rather than have like business stop for 1 or 2 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what they count, I guess, calculate, and they decide.
But
Okay.
This depends if you pay and you got decrypted or not.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of
So that's
course,
also a good point. How are you sure that?
But yes, but also the companies nowadays, they're like, they operate like businesses. If they are known not to be trusted, no one would ever pay them, because then that's not what they want.
Correct.
So you just have to, I would try to figure out who these guys are first, to know, is there a chance they're not paid? Because if there's some kind of like amateurs, whatever, then it's probably they're most likely not to decrypt. But if there's some known APT, they have a reputation to maintain. It's the whole business kind of hangs on that. The whole business model hangs on that, on the reputation.
Yep. Correct. They always advertise in the communications as well. Please look us up. We are trustworthy, and it's like a word of mouth. Yeah.
So yeah, I would try to understand like who these guys are. Maybe ask them who they represent, but try to do it in a way that boosts their ego, so they're more likely to respond and say, yeah, this is us. Like, look at what. But I have to, because the fact they didn't know that they hacked someone and didn't provide the deadline speaks to me that they're not very well known. So there's that risk that they probably will not decrypt. This is my, like, with all that I've seen so far, this is how I think. Like, they're not some big guys.
There has been no proof of life of data. We could say it like that
At this
well.
point,
Yeah,
no.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Do you have for example, ask them, do you have a page of your ransom victims, or like on dark web? They have it normal. They have even a timer.
Yep. Yeah, good point. So what we did was we negotiated with the attackers to buy time. So we sent them a counter offer saying, "Can please provide a decryptor for these and these files?" And is it possible? We said, instead of I don't know, I think it was 1 million euros. Can we do something more in the range of 20,000 euros? And at which time they came back saying, are you kidding us? But we can give you also, if you want specific machines, we can give you the decryptor keys for specific machines, and then we'll provide them. So at that time, we also continued the investigation on the logs, looking of evidence of data theft, because what we were worried about as well was that not only that they had encrypted the information, but that they potentially also stolen the data. It was a really difficult investigation because they've erased the logs in a way that we couldn't recover them. So there were no logs besides the firewall. The firewall still had logs, so we saw connections logs. And they had a couple of machines hosted somewhere in an external environment, where we then think that they accessed the external server that they had, and there was a trust relationship between the external server and the internal network, and we think that they traveled then through the external server into the internal network and then spread out to all the Linux machines. It was really hard to find evidence, but we think that they've actually gained access already 7 months prior to gaining the ransomware. The reason why is because then we saw data spikes going out of terabytes of data going out of the network that we couldn't explain. Also on that externally hosted server, the same data pattern emerged. So we saw a lot of spikes of data going out, and it didn't happen later on. The weird thing also is that we it was so hard to investigate because of the COVID pandemic, because people were working from home. So normal patterns would be everybody in the office and a lot of traffic downloaded. But now already, because people connect via VPN into their machines, there was also a lot of traffic going the other way. So it was really hard to find the normal patterns. By this time, the restoration was continuing as well, and it showed actually that the full restore was possible based on the recovery of the backup. So we, at that point, the management team decided, okay, we know now that we were able to restore. We will just have, and it was before Christmas, we'll just work through the Christmas break, and we'll restore, and we'll be back up and running. So we'll not pay a ransom anymore and no longer communicate with hackers. So they, after the initial negotiations of a couple of times, they said, okay, now that we know we were able to restore from our side, there is no more ticking time bomb. So we will stop communicating with the attackers. We'll of course continue monitoring for potential intrusions. And also, a lot of customers were asking for briefing. Like I mentioned, some of the bigger names in the industry were their customers. So they were demanding, like, what happened? What did you see? How did you protect yourself? And stuff like that. So we spent actually a lot of the first weeks in non-stop in calls with their suppliers and their customers, answering questions about what the potential impact was and what happened and what the company is doing to no longer do it in the future. And the problem is, and that's also what we noticed, is it's good practice to do these incident briefings to all your customers at the same time. Why? Because, or at the same time, or at least have the same script to tell your customers, so that you know what you told to your customers. Because if not, and if you have a meeting with one customer in the morning, another one in the afternoon, a lot can have happened during a day of investigation where you realize your initial hypothesis of this morning was wrong, and then you need to tell a different story to the customer in the evening. So I think what we always advise is to have clear a story for each day what you're going to tell your customers, and stick to that story until you have more information, and then on the next briefing tell something else. I already mentioned NDA. There was a growing concern about breaches of NDA, also from their suppliers, because what happened was some of those suppliers and customers, they shared information with this company which they weren't actually supposed to share in the first place. So they realized, oh, we broke our NDA by sharing some stuff with you that we thought nobody would ever find out. But now potentially that data comes out on the internet. So there was a whole legal conversation going on yeah, what's going on with these data. Yeah.
You said there were data spikes like 7 months prior. Maybe that's what they were when they stole, already exploited the data.
Yep.
Yeah, that looks like
yeah.
that. Yeah,
that looks like that. Yeah.
So,
yeah. So we've and also we asked for a couple of samples, and that showed that they really had some files of data already at that point.
We have one question come in,
okay.
in when making forensics investigation, there is a possibility to find check if it's had a decryption key somewhere. You see the chat as well, yeah. Tom. This, I'm not sure how it's meant, this question. Maybe,
but I think it's a good point, because that's actually the first thing you do if it's ransomware. You try to find out, if it's a known weak encryption, or if it's a weak decryptor, or if it's, for example, from one of the groups where the keys were leaked, because then you can do the encryption yourself.
Is it already known in a sense?
Yeah, there's that database.
There's the
nomoreransom.org.
It's
growing.
Is a database where you can find the decryption key. So it's always a good idea, and it's a good point actually to check whether the encryption key is on there or not, or it's a known encryption algorithm.
We didn't mention this action, but probably you did this.
Yes, we did that. Yeah, but it wasn't on the database. Yeah, no, it wasn't there. Yeah.
But did the bad guys provide the link to whatever their dark website? I don't know. Just curious. Never asked.
No, but
No?
we'll come back to that in the next slide.
Okay.
So what basically here we thought, okay, the worst is over. We can recover, and yeah, okay, we'll move on. But then the attackers shifted gears with extra extortion. So they sent emails threatening with a fake press release where they would say, yeah, the company is being negligent about their security and they lost all their data. And then they started to threaten with selling or leaking data, basically trying to make value of the data that they stole. And they also started to intimidate their employees, not only their employees, but also their former employees. So what this company did in the past was scan everybody's passport and diploma into their HR file. And also that information was, of course, extracted. So now every employee was contacted on his personal details saying, hey, Mr. or Mrs. whatever, here's the attacker. If you know that your company has been hacked, your employer has been negligent, also former employees that were no longer working at that company got that email. Would you like to buy your data back? For, I think it was 600 euros, you could buy your data back from them, and then they would remove it from the leak.
Sure.
Not only that, not only that, but the employees that were working on Linux, the cookies were stolen out of the browsers, so the session cookies, which they used to actually target on the employees as Google Photos, their personal accounts. So suddenly, when we thought it was over, all the employees came to the war room in that company and said, "What's going on? Please, please do something about it, because we're getting attacked on a personal level as well." Which meant then that yeah, we also needed to take some action. I'm coming back to that later. They were also threatening customers and suppliers. They were offering also their data back for sale. They were saying, yeah, your partner here is unreliable. They haven't secured your data properly, but no worries, you can buy it back from us if you want, and we can sell it back to you. Or they even said, hey, you've bought this type of data, this product from that company. Here's the full source code of what they developed for you, so that you can have insight into what actually they created for you, and so forth. By then, we also received threat intelligence that showed that actually the data was being sold on the underground. We got notification from our local national CERT here. They monitor for all Belgian companies. I guess you have the same thing in Latvia with the Latvian companies. And they reached out to us saying, yeah, we found information on the dark web. Back then it was breached, I think. Forum doesn't exist anymore, where they were trying to make value of the data. You saw them actually selling parts of the data online there. What would you do? Would you start communicating again with the attackers now with all these harassment and start negotiations back up again, or?
I mean, what's the point of communicating? They already, it's like basically showed all their cards. I mean, they're gonna try to get the money anyway, and yeah, please buy back our data. They can erase it. Yeah, sure, because they can be trusted. Yeah, of course. Like, I mean, I don't think at this point there is a point. There is any point in contacting the bad guys, because it's already, everything is out there. Like, you would contact them to stall, but stall for what?
Yeah.
In this case, so
you need to estimate value of data, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's the first.
The value of data indeed is one thing, but the company came together and they said, yeah, that's not like we're going to get a certificate that they have erased our data, but they did actually an estimation on the value of the data, and their conclusion was, from a commercial perspective, there's two things. There's the personal data that they lost, which what they did for that was they sponsored for every one of their employees to get a new passport and new ID cards and new identity documentation, which they also supported with the claims to the police for getting new identity documents. And And then for the commercial data, they had a conversation with their customers as well. And most of their customers said, there's no way that we're going to buy IP that we think is tainted. So they say we're not going to buy data from the underground market, because for them it opens them up to potentially lawsuits, because it would be visible in their end product that it's based on stolen data. And then the management team said, okay, well, let's just not buy it anymore. Let's stop communicating and let's just ignore this and continue. What they also did is to help their employees. They sponsored antivirus products for all their employees. They sponsored new routers for all their employees. They sponsored new home laptops for all their employees, because
for private devices,
for private devices, because they said, okay, it's our fault maybe, but not exactly our fault, but you've been implicated in this, and they wanted to do the right thing. So they said, okay, let's just make sure that everybody can start with a clean slate.
Where did they get the money? Did they get it from insurance? Do they have insurance?
No, they didn't have insurance. They have insurance now, by the way, but they didn't have insurance. They didn't have insurance, but their idea was, we're paying now for the remediation efforts and for getting in a better secured place. We don't want to pay the attackers, because that's money that's wasted, and we want to pay money to get to a better secure stage and to make sure that we're better for this in the future.
Oh, no.
So indeed, so they decided not to pay data. The extortion threats to all the stakeholders went on for 6 months. So during 6 months, all the customers, suppliers, they kept on getting emails regularly from the attackers with extortion attempts. The company had to fully rebuild their operations with security in mind from the ground up. It's not that it was unsecure, but it was based on old principles, basically on Linux security of some time ago. So they strengthened their IT security posture. They acquired the endpoint protection response product, then managed by an MSSP. They shared also that they were doing better security with their customers and suppliers. From the investigation, we also potentially think that it was the Black Matter ransomware as a service group that was involved. How do we know this? From the tactics that they had, from the Monero extortion schemes that they showed, from the email addresses that they used. We have a clue that they were related to the Black Matter ransomware as a service group, but that means that we don't know who was the initial attacker. We also think that we were dealing with several different attackers during the operation, because we noticed that the tone of writing changed. Sometimes it was fluent English, then it was not that fluent English. Sometimes it was short messages, and it was lengthy messages that we got from the attackers. So we've saw that it was not always the same person we were dealing with. What have we learned here? I think it's important for a severe cyber incident. It's not just an IT or a security problem. It goes wider than that, because you need to think with your the rest of the company, like, how what's the impact, what's the potential cost of the data, what's the potential cost of recovery. There's a lot of questions that you will get from stakeholders, employees, suppliers, customers, and be prepared to handle those, because they will distract you from your investigation and get the environment back up and running. Be prepared for what information you want to communicate. If you are in a company, make playbooks up front saying, in this case, we'll communicate that. In this case, we'll communicate that, so that you know up front what you need to communicate, because in times of crisis, it otherwise takes too much time to spend on crisis communication. Always assume your data has been stolen and you will get extorted. The minute you are in a ransomware situation, it sadly is the case that most likely you will get extorted and your data will be stolen. prepare with this with incident playbooks, but also practice them. What we've also seen in some companies is that if you don't practice them, people tend to forget what the process is. So from time to time, you need to do simulations and say like, hey, we simulate ransomware in environment so that the team knows what to do. And an important thing also is don't hang on to all your data. You can only lose the data that you have. If you and we're all guilty about that, I think, but a lot of companies are saving a lot of data that they don't really need anymore. It's data from projects that happened years and years ago, from projects that no longer matter. So why not, if you still think you need it, why not save that offline on an offline storage device somewhere that it can be hacked, or even just remove it if you think I don't need it anymore. There's no use to have personal data of employees that left 10 years ago lying around on your drive.
Yeah, sometimes anonymization helps as well.
Anonymization as well.
You don't need to identify. If you need statistics, mostly these questions about the data retention comes from marketing. Oh, we need to analyze what so we could strategize and like that. But you don't need identify. You need statistics for that.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, that's just anonymized data can be perfectly fine to do that. To have an inventory also in your legal requirements that you know for which NDAs that you potentially need to delete the data after a project is finished. Even in this case, we had questions from suppliers that said, can you remove all our data from all your previous backups now? Because we don't trust that you that our data is safe with you. Be prepared for those kind of questions. And then the key controls in this case was strong user authentication and user management. They didn't have MFA on every system, which is sad but true. Network segmentation. This is what saved their Windows laptops. Their Windows laptops were in a different segment because the Linux guys didn't trust the Windows laptop because they thought they were getting infected by Windows laptops. In this case, it was the other way around.
Oh my God, this is awesome.
Have a good asset and vulnerability management. We think they went in through a known vulnerability in one of the externally hosted systems. So yeah, patching fast and early is good. Having logs matters. Although it might seem like a boring task to set up logs and making sure that you capture them and in a secure fashion that you can do something. But if you don't have logs, you're basically flying blind in these types of incidents, and it's hard to find the root cause. And also make sure that your logs have the right timestamp. In this case, this wasn't the case. So the firewall was lagging 1 hour behind, or a couple of other systems were lagging 2 hours behind. So each time when you were comparing what happened, you needed to do +2 on the other, -1 on the other to see like, okay, this happened at that time, which makes an investigation very, very complicated, very fast. Early detection and rapid response capabilities, I think it counts as enough focus on being able to detect these type of incidents with detection and response software, and have a backup system in place, but also test your backup and make sure that you actually, if you have a process of swapping tapes, that you actually do that process and not say like, okay, it's Friday night, I'm going home, I'll do the tape next week, and then next week you'll do it next week, and no, you need to stick to your backup process.
I think we covered this point pretty well in the last webinar, like there are three types of admins. Peter exactly. Said there's those who are not there yet, there's those who have backups, and then there's those whose backups actually work.
who have tested backups.
Yeah, tested backups are we see that a lot with customers where we do an assessment and we ask them, are you sure the backup is running, but nobody tested it in the past that it ever was successful. So I think that concludes also my slide. So I don't know if there are any other questions or
let me check in the chat or in Q&A section. But I have one more question. This is maybe for my personal interest because I've noticed this in companies a lot about private and company devices. Because usually this is, I see a big problem that's, and this mostly happens in smaller companies. In big organizations, they usually have the resources to have the devices provided from the company's side. But from the smaller companies or mid-sized, usually people bring their own device. use the accounts of the company email and everything on their mobile device, and that is, I see as a problem. In this case, was there this situation as well, or was it secure on that side?
They didn't had personal devices. Everybody had a laptop from the organization. But yeah, with legacy
and
antivirus.
these computers in our pockets.
Yeah, correct. Those were indeed personal. That they had email and stuff on their personal device. But the email and the cloud storage was not their most key asset. It was more on the Linux machines were their key asset, and they were not cloud connected. But yeah, they were connected to the internet, which was a problem in its sense. But I think you're right in the sense that the personal devices are a specific problem where you need to have the right controls over to make sure that you're able to trust what people are doing with that, or at least are able to wipe your data off of it if it gets compromised at some point. It also helps if you don't allow personal devices, but that's of course depends on your company's taste, because it makes defending for cloud-based identity fraud and identity account takeovers a lot easier. I've been involved recently in a case where they've did really good social engineering, and then if you don't allow the private devices but only company devices or there's a certificate on, then it's a lot harder for the attackers to actually breach that that control. But in some companies, they're really open, and they're modern.
I usually recommend to think this as if they use personal devices, it expands your company's perimeter, and so you have to defend a lot more, and you don't know where and what in that sense, where private devices go, what is installed on them, what accounts are used, because if you're using for the private accounts and work accounts on one device, that's a risk, as I see it.
It's a crime against security. Using both accounts on one device, it's awful. It's like, it's basically expands perimeter and reduces visibility. What could go wrong?
Yeah.
Oh, nah. I think the whole point is not to trust. Bring your own device type devices.
Well, trust is good, but control is better, right? So then you need to just
trust but verify was the saying.
Trust but verify. Yeah. So then extra verifications need to be in place, or you might not be able to do as much with your private device as you would be able to do with your corporate device.
Maybe you need to build the right dependencies. So I have figured out that the security of my domain admin account depends on security of my limited user account, which in order depends on security of my private laptop. So if I navigate to my company from my laptop, so dependency is totally wrong. Like everything depends on security of my private laptop. So I need to build dependencies some other way, probably.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. In a case I was recently involved on, it actually was an admin's limited account, so it's normal account that was exploited, and then they found information. They actually read information on his cloud drive, like, okay, how do we need to get elevated privilege, because it's documented, of course, in a process. And then they used his limited account to access the privileged account system, and then they got domain admin credentials. So I think in that case also designing your AD or your Entra ID environment with the right tiering or the enterprise access model that Microsoft recommends, but that everybody wants, but nobody does. That's is actually key in that case, because
some still try.
Yeah, I think that's ambitious, but I think it's in fact the company that got breached there. They are now in full on road to enterprise access model, but yeah, it's of course
too bad. It's after the fact, not before.
Yeah, but that's the unfortunate usual scenario. As Tom said, afterwards they had services for the SOC center and they implemented security measures, rebuilt security with rebuilt let's say, infrastructure with security in mind. Usually after precedent, companies and people think about security. That's unfortunate about that.
Yep.
Linux guys got reality check.
Yeah.
also that Linux is not more secure than Windows.
Yeah. By the way, maybe an anecdote as well. I went to a lunch with the CEO of the company of the case I just showed. I asked him after a year, like, yeah, did you see any noticeable impact on your revenue stream or profits? And they said no. There was a dip, of course, when we couldn't be able to work during the couple of months that they were working offline and that they were working in limited fashion. But at the end of the day, they didn't suffer commercially from this. In fact, yeah.
Got lucky. They got lucky.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, any more comments, Dana and or Peter? Or do you have anything to add, or maybe?
You see, it's really hard to protect your systems when you have never been hacked. Yeah, because
right, you're the famous guy.
when you are once bitten, so you are twice shy. So you need to learn the lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
That's
for
true.
me, I think the most pain point from all the lessons learned, like just for me, personal experience, is all the pain points around there being some incident response playbooks or some processes, even some tools, but people have no idea how to use them, where they are, because they're there, but they're just, it's like with backups are they working? If they're not, you don't have any backups. So here's the same. Are these processes, procedures working? If you haven't tried, you don't know, which means you don't have any, forget you have any playbooks unless you have drilled.
And one of the advices there is also, where do you store these procedures? If you store them on the central file share, which potentially is the prime target of your ransomware group, make sure that you have an offline copy somewhere where you can still access your key breakouts accounts and your procedures, so that because in case of a crisis, you probably don't have access to those on your regular location. So have sort of a safe location where you can access these is key. Yeah.
Your home
don't
PC.
have a lot of
home PC.
Yeah.
You also don't have a lot of time. You can't be going and reading like 20 pages of incident response manual. So it had partially has to be here.
Needs to be here, but
it needs to be in the brain. You have to understand like the principle, like how do you handle incidents in general, like
usually my response to this is the best plan is the one that monkey can do.
Yeah,
that's the best. That's the best plan.
Best plan, the one that works. Yeah. Have anything else? Interesting story. Such a small company, such a big can be such a big impact.
Nowadays when it's technology companies, you don't have to have lots of employees or a big building or to have a big impact. It's technology. Small thing can have a lot of impact. Okay, so main takeaways for me are just to do a little bit of at the end. So data retention, don't retain too much data. I like to say have a life cycle for data as well. If you the same as for devices, you need to have a life cycle when the device becomes either unusable, the same that is with the operating systems and any kind of software. If you cannot update it to secure, you try not to use it, or you unfortunately I see in these cases where old software is still being used, but most in those cases are specific ones. But data as well, in pieces of information are tools in this case as well. Nowadays, more and more, it's becoming tools. So think about what data you have and what can be used, and in a sense, against you in this kind of scenario. So one is data retention. Then what I heard, the important thing is to think proactively, check your procedures and backups. But that is usually the thing we say every time. Check your backups, check that they work and you can restore them. What else in main thingy as well? Yeah, and think about security. and accounts separation. That part.
Segmentation.
Onboarding, offboarding.
Yep.
Very important.
Yeah, segmentation and separation. Okay. Maybe I forgot some important points. Is there anything else which is what the most important thing is of today's conversation? Any last words from you? Or
the question was if you need to pay ransom, if you want to pay ransom. That's maybe the main question. I don't know.
Well, yeah, some.
How do you mean? If you what to do if you need to pay? I think what we see also in cases, by the way, is that attackers are looking for evidence that you have insurance, because they can also read the policies, and that they already know that once you have insurance, you're probably going to pay a bit of the ransom, because the insurers are pushing to get that done. But it's not easy to get to pay indeed, because you need to have crypto coins, you need to get those the funds into a crypto fund. It's not an easy task for a company to actually pay the ransom sometimes as well. Yeah.
And usually these cyber criminals look at the financial reports of the company as well to know how much to ask. You know?
Yeah, that was in this case also the case, because they knew exactly what cash they had on balance, so they knew what. Because they also said in one of the communications, we're a parasite. We don't want to kill you. We just want to feed off you.
Yeah. So then the public domain of information and what's there, remember, that is always accessible to everyone. That's what's on the internet is always there, and everyone can see it. Yeah. Okay. So we are then finishing this conversation. The video recording of this discussion and this webinar will be available on our social sites. In the autumn and the September, we will have Asset Security Day conference in Latvia. So if you think about security, you can join in and attend this conference. That's just a little bit as well. And basically, yeah, if you have any questions, I'm looking at the chat or Q&A section at the moment. Then, yeah, at the moment we don't have any more. What else can I say? Yeah.
It was fun.
follow, share, like, as always, yeah. But if you have any concerns, you can always, or you need a consultation, you can always contact us. We will figure out a way to help you. We are security concerned company, and that's why we are doing this. Okay, then.
Concerned individuals as well.
Individuals as well, not company. Yeah, because I like to say that there's always behind any company, anything, there's a person behind, because there are people, and people make decisions. That's the thing. Okay, that's it from our side. If any more comments you have, you can add them. If not, then we can finish this up.
No, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
It was really fun. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Interesting.
Nice to
Insightful.
Tom.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
All right.
Okay, bye then.